Hello and welcome. I'm Graham Fitch and I am the author of Practicing the Piano blog and the co-founder of the online academy, which is a series of resources, a library of resources for pianists, piano teachers. And this is our practicing clinic, which is a monthly endeavor here. John, welcome. Lisa, and if you would just, as you come in, just tell me where you're watching from. And you know, there's all these things that you can do with hearts and flowers and you know, like buttons and all of that. Please do that. Edward, welcome. What I've got here is a series of questions that the subscribers to the Online Academy have sent in. And I'm going to attempt to, well, at least address them, if not completely answer them. So, practice. The thing with piano playing is that often people think, oh, I have a problem with my technique. And so they think everything is related to technique. Well, obviously we can't play the piano if we don't have technique. But a lot of the time I have noticed that people say, oh, I've got a technical problem with something, when they really mean they haven't quite understood what the music is doing, either what the music means artistically or the patterns that the music has. And I can give you a very quick example before I get onto my questions here. That I had a chap come for a few lessons who was doing his grade 8 exam, the ABRSM grade 8 exam, and he was having problems with his melodic minor scales on black keys, and he said, I have a real technical problem with them, I can't manage them. So I asked him to play one, and sure enough it was all over the place, but I didn't detect that it was specifically a technical problem. What I noticed was that he didn't really know the pattern of notes. So I asked him if he would just play the scale with one finger, and he couldn't, meaning he didn't understand the design. So his homework for that week was to bring all the melodic minor scales back with one finger, literally, and then we could work on any technical problems that ensued. So there's a lot of people that have come in and said hi, and I've completely ignored you. Maeve from Scotland, Dorian, and others that had come before. So let me get straight onto the first question, which is from Sheila. And Sheila asks, I would like to know how to practice the repeated notes and octaves in the middle section of Chopin's Prelude in D flat major, the Raindrop, so they sound smooth and even. Also, how to practice the crescendos, diminuendos evenly. Right, well, we all know the Raindrop Prelude, this gorgeous piece which he wrote when he was in a monastery, and I'm only assuming that the rain must have been coming down outside the monastery unless there were holes in the roof. So Lynn, hello, we don't really want to make too much of those A flats at the beginning. We will hear them no matter what we do, because they're obtrusive just by being repeated notes that are faster than the other notes. But Sheila's question related to the middle section, which is this. Big crescendo, a long phrase. That phrase is really long. It goes from bar 28 to bar 36 with one long phrase mark. So we must be careful not to chop it up. Few things. First of all, with the repeated note itself, we have to make sure that we don't lift the key all the way up. We need to find the escapement or the sounding point in the mechanism of the piano, which means lifting the key only partially before we repeat it. Now, if you're struggling with that, I have a tip. If you put the thumb or something, another finger, so that the key can't come all the way up, use your other hand. Hola, hello. Mary, hello. Lots of people joining. Bob, nice to meet you again. Do you see what I'm doing there? This hand is stopping the key from coming all the way up. So all I need to do now is to release this hand and see if I can find that same spot in the key. So in the key, not away from the key. Now, upright pianos don't work like that unless you've got a Steingräber. I tried a Steingräber upright, which managed to do that remarkably. I don't know how they managed, because it's quite difficult to get an upright piano to respond that way. So that would be the first thing, just to keep that inside the key. Remember, the rain is outside, not inside, even though it's going to be a storm coming. So left hand, really important with the left hand that we voice it beautifully. I don't think there's anything interesting about voicing to the top G sharps. isn't it? And if you remember what crescendo means, hello Viv, hello Janet, crescendo means soft. It means soft where we see the word crescendo. A lot of the time people just see the word crescendo and immediately play louder, but it's a gradual thing. So begin it. You could even dip down a little bit at this point. Save it, you've got a long way to go. Now listen to what's left of this, so that when you play your next melodic line notes, the C sharp and the E, they don't protrude, because we can't, if we play this pair of notes with the same amount of sound as we used on the G sharp, D sharp, we'll have an almighty accent in the line. So just listen to what's left of the sound here. Match it up. Then you can come back. Now there's a little tip I can give you here. I would play, or suggest playing the right hand, let the right hand take the E at the top there. In the hand, don't have a floppy hand. If you've got a floppy hand, a floppy wrist, it's like, you know, this kind of effect. You're not going to get any sound at all. So let the wrist support the hand. And you see I'm right inside my key, and then Chopin has added notes here, meaning the crescendo is easier to achieve. I wouldn't call it a trick, a tip, call it a tip, which is in bar 38, if you pedal on the last beat, here, you don't need to pedal again for that. What's the sense in re-pedaling? Even though it's marked in the score, there's no need to re-pedal. So you can catch that resonance, and there's no struggle there with the grace note, which doesn't have to be played with the fifth finger, by the way. May be played, probably easier to play it with the pinky, but you could play it with the third finger if you fancied, or even the thumb, and let the arm travel up there. That's no distance for the arm to move in that time. So then we have the fortissimo. Keep close to the keys. Vibrate my pedal in that bar 43, just a vibration of the pedal. So you know, the crescendo is gradual. It's easy to do it too soon. I mean, it's tempting to do it too soon. Andrew, hello from Oz. Yes, nice to see you again, Andrew. And Diana from a little closer. So I hope that's given you a few thoughts on that anyway. Yeah, I think I've probably covered that as much as I'm able to in this session. So Serena asks, how do you practice having direction and not stopping halfway in the piece? Also, I tend to have rolling notes and sometimes hit the note beside, especially for bigger intervals than fifth onwards. How do I overcome that? I'm actually an organ student, and my teacher sent me to take piano lessons to learn the techniques. It's a really complicated question, actually, Serena, because it's very personal to you. I would almost hesitate to suggest anything for the second part of your question, because it would all depend on how you're moving at the keyboard. My sense is that perhaps you're, as I've seen from organists before, they tend to do a lot of finger substitution, and they don't move in the same way that we pianists need to move. So my first thought was, you know, have you practiced broken chords? You can either do triads and just feel the connection in the hand from one finger to the next. So I have to contract my hand there, now I have to open my hand. So if you'd practice those in all keys, you can use the same finger. It's harder to do that when you put the thumb on a black note. Notice what I need to do is to move in and then back out again. Same goes for the fifth finger to a slightly lesser extent. If you have exhausted those and want to go a little further, try the four-note broken chords. And again, notice what I'm doing here. I'm moving my hand so that my forearm is behind the finger that's playing, behind each finger that's playing. Squarely behind the pinky, then I move via this lateral movement that I think some organists might not have installed. It's like software. Have you got that installed in your playing? So that would be one thing. And just to address your question about having direction and stopping halfway in the piece, I think that definitely is a practicing related question rather than a technique related question. I have chosen just at random a very, very simple little piece just so I can you know, illustrate using something very simple. Ola's greetings from Norway. First time I participate. Welcome, Ola. Nice to have you on board here. Right, so this is the Menuet in FK5 by Mozart, composed in Salzburg on the 5th of July, 1762, for those of you that like to know these things. He was young. Right, so this is how it sounds. Then something different. So if you find yourself, that's just the first half, if you find yourself stalling or stopping and starting, I would venture to suggest that you might be practicing all in one long stream rather than dividing it up. So I'm proposing sections. I've got a mantra which is slowly, separately, sections as a kind of elementary practice. It's like basic practicing. So slowly doesn't necessarily mean slowly, but it relates to speed. So we might change the speed, the eventual speed, to something either very slow or somewhat slower. Hands separately. Separately means hands separately, or it could mean lines separately, strands separately. And of course, sections is not starting from the beginning and going to the end. So if you find yourself getting stuck, what I've got here is, I guess, a number of 2-bar phrases, but they're not. You wouldn't want to play them as 2-bar phrases. You want to fill them as 4-bar phrases. So, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to start from the end. I'm going to start from bars 9 and 10, and if I'm happy with that, I can choose to repeat it, maybe once, maybe twice. Don't repeat it mindlessly, repeat it with some goal in mind, maybe to make the phrasing a little bit more beautiful the next time. You might be focusing on that appoggiatura. But if you're happy with it, or when you're happy with it, just back up another 2 bars and work from here. So now I've got, working from the end, a 4-bar section. Then I'd go back again, 2 bars further, and so on until I get to the beginning. That's one thing. A slow tempo might even be as slow as this. Your section might just be that much. Release. Do you see? And separate hands. Don't forget separate hands. And don't do it mechanically. Work on the sound. You might want to sing lines. Make it beautiful. We're always after quality of sound, beauty of sound. Florence is saying hello from Narberth, Pembrokeshire. How lovely. Now, the other thing you could do with this is to work in bar by bar sections. I call this BBB plus 1, BBB plus 1, 1 bar and 1 note. Now I'm going to start from the beginning and do it this way. You can do this slowly, you can do this up to the speed. Let me show you how it works. Off, take the hands off. Now ask yourself, did that sound good? Did it feel good? Was it correct from the point of view of notes and rhythms? I noticed I wasn't really happy with my sound at the end of the bar. That's better. Now the temptation to go on is kind of overwhelming, but I resist the temptation to go on because I want to really refine and get that as good as I can before I go on. When I go on, I start from the note that I finished on. I don't start again from the beginning. I start from the first note of bar 2. Only that much, 1 bar and 1 note. Then I can connect bars 1 and 2 together. Do you get the idea? Then I can start from bar 3, go from bar 3 to the downbeat of bar 4, and so on. So Kilton is saying hello from Brazil. Wow. Sarah, thank you. Your tips are top tips as always. Thank you very much, Sarah. So this is a great way to practice. It doesn't matter what level you're at. You can practice like this. And if you've got something that you're struggling to memorize, or you think you've memorized but you want to test it out, try bar by bar plus 1 from memory. There's a lot more. Actually, there's a couple other things I did want to say about that. Very often we can simplify the patterns in the music by blocking. And I'm now looking at bar 5, which is written like this. But we can practice it like this. Do you see how that works? So instead of playing, I play that as a block together with my bass, or after. So we could do it this way, or I could do it this way. See, there are all sorts of possibilities for practicing. Now, the practice tools, I've written a lot about the practice tools. You'll find a lot of information about that on my blog, practicingthepiano.com, and on the online academy, and in the workshops that I'm about to do on the practice tools. So if that's whetted your appetite for more, come and join me on some of the practice workshops. Now Estella says, I'm currently working on Chopin Nocturne Opus 55 number 1, the F minor. My question is on the last page, measures 90 to 97. Well, yeah, actually I'm going to go from 89 because it doesn't make sense to start in by 90. The left hand, F minor, well, okay. How do you keep the C, F and A natural singing for 7 measures? I lose those singing notes even if I keep keys depressed and right pedal down. Help, please. Let me see if I can help. Tagan, hello from Myanmar. Nice to meet you. Lou, thank you for your comment. So the F minor, very, very beautiful nocturne. Ends in the major rather gloriously, I think. After all this minor key music, we have a kind of glowing end. So if I do it slowly just to show you what's going on, the left hand does that, and we do change the pedal through. Let me show you with the right hand. Change, 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 and hold. Now if I lift up, I can still hear my my left-hand chord. It's not terribly clear. In other words, it's not loud, but there's enough sound there provided I've fed it. I've put in my score feed. In other words, give this note and this note enough sound so that it does last out. So I think that really is probably the best piece of advice I can give you is not to be shy about giving this a good breakfast, because it's going to skip lunch and it's going to skip dinner if you want it to last all the way through. Do you see, I've not even got my pedal down, but if I were to do that, and we could sit here with a stopwatch and just see how long that lasts. Now, I'm not going to do that because that would be silly, but you know, provided you've given enough sound at the beginning. If you're struggling with that stretch, I did come up with a thought. If you change to the 3rd finger there, you might find that you can just get round. Play 5 and 2, switch to a 3 if you can, and then come round. And don't worry, that stretch is not going to hurt your hand, I promise you. That's not going to do anything unless you've got an injury, in which case I would not do that. You can't really take it with the right hand because I would have to keep my pedal all the way down. But actually, having said that, that doesn't sound to me catastrophic. You know, keeping the pedal down for the whole thing. So yes, anything else? That would be my advice there, Estella. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I did have a thought about the chords at the end, but I probably should be moving on. Chanami, hello. Bihui, coming from not sure where. Next question was from Stuart, who is working on the list arrangement of Schubert's Ständchen, the Serenade. and would appreciate help on bringing up to speed the well, actually, I actually didn't quite understand. If you're around, Stuart, and you've got bar numbers for the first part of the question, maybe you could zap them through. But I can certainly address the latter part of the question, which was the ascending chromatic scale toward the end, all of which, to make it harder still, have to be played dolcissimo. Yes, what does dolcissimo really mean? Sweetly. It implies softly, doesn't it? I've often thought of some of these words that composers write in, dolcissimo. You know, we automatically assume that it's going to be soft. I guess maybe that's a good assumption to make. But another word or another term that I often find myself questioning is espressivo, which means expressively, but first of all, expressive of what? And what about the music that's not marked with that? Does that mean we don't play it expressively? I think it's one of those terms that conjures up associations that aren't really grounded on anything too secure. But I would say with the chromatic scale, let me just show you what this is. I think I can do that better. Line, 2 lines. I hear a pair of clarinets here. I just want to keep playing, but I won't because that's not the question. The question really relates to this chromatic scale. Again, this edition, I can't understand why publishing houses put out music without bar numbers. It's so inconvenient, especially when we're teaching so much online now. Whatever bar number that is, it's a few bars away from the end. So what I do is I catch this in my pedal, hold the pedal down. Now the fingering I would suggest is based on groups of 4 fingers. Okay, people are writing in lieu. I think of dolce as tenderly, yeah, lovely. Maybe says dolce sweetly, yes, I know what the word means, but I'm just wondering what it means musically, what we have to do in order to do that. Is it maybe just a feeling? Maybe we just have to feel sweet and tender. So the fingering I would suggest, it's what I call the advanced chromatic fingering, which is a group of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, wherever possible, except where to do so would land the thumb on a black key, in which case we use a group of 3. So if I'm doing, let me just start it an octave lower so you can see it a bit more clearly. Actually, let me start it 2 octaves lower. So the fingering would be 2, 1, and then 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I think I'm probably going a bit too far. Maybe not. Do you get the idea there? It's the same at the end of the opening of the Pathetique Sonata, where you've got this chromatic scale. So if you start that with a 5, and then 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 4, and so on. You've got a lot of flexibility with that fingering because there are fewer thumbs. If you did the 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, whatever the pattern would be, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, which is the elementary fingering for chromatic scales, you would find that it's heavy and maybe not as fast as you'd want it. So that would be my suggestion there. So that would give you... It doesn't have to be terribly fast. It looks fast because it's written in fast note values, but as long as it's even, and we've got a little time at the end, it's going to sound faster because of its evenness. If it's lumpy and bumpy, it's going to betray itself. So okay, so what I'm going to do now is just to give you one other suggestion for practice here, which would be to practice it with a staccato finger, which is my suggestion for anything that's leggero, in other words, lightness. It feels staccato under the hand. And don't just practice that chromatic scale there. Practice just isolated chromatic scales with that fingering. Do it hands together. If you're not sure of the fingering, just make a mirror image with the left hand, so that the left hand learns the skill as well. There's little sense in learning that fingering just for the right hand. Let the left hand learn it too. Okay, right, now let me move on to the next. Janet is saying, I am trying to learn Schubert Sonata D784. I once had a teacher who asked me to, they challenged me on the word trying, saying, as long as you're trying to do something, you're not actually doing it. So maybe I could rephrase your question. I am learning Schubert Sonata D784. In the second movement, toward the end, there is a series of trills that needs to be played between the third and the fourth finger of the right hand. Well, does it? While holding onto a note with the second finger. Well, do we hold? How can I improve my finger dexterity to allow these trills to be played? Well, I would challenge some of these assumptions, Janet, if you don't mind me saying so. I don't think the best way to trill is from the fingers. I think the best way to trill whenever we can is to rotate. So here, if I show you on the keyboard, and for me the fastest pair of fingers is 1 and 3. Can you see the rotations there? Keep the forearm in one spot. And again, I'm trying to find my, I'm not trying to find, I am finding my sounding point. So meaning I don't have to lift the keys all the way up. If I did that, it would sound like a machine gun fire. It would not be aesthetically pleasing at all. But there's a few things here. This is the part that Janet's referring to. So here. Now, okay, it's written, this is bar 52, it's written with this minim, this half note underneath in the right hand to be long, but you do not have to hold it. In fact, I can't imagine anybody being able to play that. If you look at the end of the bar, you've got to get up to there, the E. Now officially, that would mean holding that. Incredibly awkward and unnecessary. So my first suggestion would be let go of the thumb, and then if you, let's say you start the trill with a 3-4, move to a 2-3, 2-3, 2-3, because a 2-3 is also a very convenient pair of fingers to trill between. So what am I doing here? Let me do it in slow motion. So the fingering is 3, or a possible fingering is 3, 4, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2 for the termination. Now, that's the other thing. I would suggest organising the trill metrically, because if you think about it, a trill has a finite number of notes, obviously, and if those notes are organised metrically in the practice room, and you could even do a couple of possible realizations, then you can let that be free when you play. You don't have to sit there. I don't think it's possible to count up to 9. You wouldn't want to be sitting in your exam or on the stage performing the piece counting up to 9. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 would probably be the maximum number of notes you'd need. You could probably get away with 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, including the termination at the end. And so let's just go through that again. So release the thumb, change the pedal here, release the thumb. There I can go to a 1 and a 3. Here as well, 3, 4, 1, 3. There was one other thing I wanted to add here just before I move on. Sinden says, thanks for giving this information. You gave me what I need for another song with trolls. Oh, okay. Not sure what a song with trolls is, but anyway. Okay, so what I'm going to, again, the final comment I'm going to make about that is to loiter on the first note of the trill. So obviously you're going to start the trill from the main note here. I say obviously, but I think in this period of music we would, certainly in this example, this particular example we would. So instead of it being ticka, 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 in other words, and let me see if I can do it. I would want to loiter a little bit. So I establish the main note, and then I start my trill. And what I would aim for is to play firmly on the beginning, now soften, and build in some sort of shape to the trill so that it sounds melodic rather than rhythmic. In other words, it's got shape, it's got direction. I think that's what I would want to say about that. Now let's look at the last question that came in, which is from Mark, who's currently working on the Tchaikovsky First Concerto, and I'm having difficulties getting the interlocking passages to run well, especially in the first movement, bars 1, 5, 8 onwards, where there are single notes in the left hand and octaves in the right hand. And then Mark mentions another section there. He's given a metronome mark that he can reach, which is a 1, 2, 5 on the metronome, and he obviously wants to go faster. So this is the bit now. Let me see if I can just pick it up from where he mentions, which I think is around here, isn't it? That sort of area. Now, first of all, it obviously needs pedal. It needs quite generous pedal, but I'm not all the way down in my pedal. I guess what I'm doing really is vibrating. I'm trilling with my foot. So I've never thought of it quite like that way, but it's this sort of sense. It's you know, if you can imagine a dog that's jumping up. You're taking your dog for a walk and it keeps jumping up. You go down boy, down boy. You're trying to temper the resonance there. So there's several things that important about this sort of thing. One is mechanically how we're going to do this. Now I would say the faster you want to play, the closer you have to be to the keys. Now if you are using lots of floppy wrist movements, do you see what happens there? When I release upwards, the wrist is going to add drag to my release and it's going to slow me down. Now sometimes we want that, you know, in a two-note slur of the sort that we found in that Mozart example earlier. Or was here, wasn't it? Wherever it was. I would want to be a little resilient here in the release, in the wrist. But in this instance, I would not want anything to be flopping around from the wrist. So the first thing I would do would be actually to practice it. I'm going to do it slowly, but together. So. I am there, super close to my keyboard, and again my pinky is firm. It has to be firm, otherwise I'm not going to get any sound there. But a firm finger does not mean tension. A lot of people are confused by this. If you think of picking up an object that's somewhat heavy, I don't know, I sometimes think of a fruit bowl that's got apples and things in it, your fingers would have to be somewhat firm, otherwise the thing would slip through your hand. But it doesn't mean to say that your body is racked with tension or your arms are in any way affected by that. So you can explore that by just firming up the fingers. You can even put, this pencil's too big, but if you put a pencil or something between the 5 and the 1 and just get used to moving the arm with that pencil there. But you can, if you retain the grip, or rather if you don't retain the grip, you will lose the pencil. And you want to keep the pencil. So the first thing I would do would be to practice it together as close as possible. It doesn't have to be loud. You know that famous bit from the Tchaikovsky. Okay, the next thing I would do probably would be something along these lines. In other words, to desync them a little bit. Ola, I'm going to call my failed trills trolls. Oh, okay. Now I get the... You meant trills when you said trolls, right? When it comes to the internet, we have to be careful of trolls. So the thing here is to desynchronize. So I'm playing the left hand just ever so slightly before. Then maybe I can do. Actually, the next example would lend itself. The next extract that you mentioned here, Mark, which is in bar 238. We've got this. Let me do it slowly. So you can hear. Again, that needs a firmness in the wrists, firmness but not tension. Really close. So the first thing I would do would be to just work separate hands, seeing how close you can keep when you move from one position to the next. No bending here, no breaking here. Yeah, that, and then together, left hand, the same idea, super close. And you've probably noticed this line. Have you played the middles of the chords as a line? I would certainly do that. And then again, play together. It's not going to sound so great. You'll notice that I'm not practicing loudly. It says forte. I'm aware up here that it's going to be forte, but I don't need to do much of my practice, or certainly I don't need to do all of my practice at a forte dynamic level. I can add the forte later relatively easily. So go for something mezzo here. So what am I doing? Together, focusing on keeping my wrists in one spot and keeping as close to the keyboard as I can. Then I would do the same job as before. And then, so that's pairs of notes. And then, and again, I'm noticing myself move too much. So I would try and move as little as possible. So these are groups of three. And I noticed the group toward the end of the bar was not at the same speed as the others. So what I'm doing is using the feedback loop, which those of you who know my work will know. It means that as I'm playing, I've got some radar antenna there that's saying, okay, your first group worked nicely, the second group worked nicely, your third group was a bit slow. So I log that so that I can go back to it afterwards and repair that if I need to, or fix that spot up so that it's as fast as the others. Then I would just extend the chains. You see what we're doing here? We're working in chains. So then you might find, so what did I do? So then, I'm moving too much. That's better. You see what I'm doing? Then I can start the chain from the left hand. Those two occasions I started from the right hand, but how about starting it from the left? So building up chains from 2 notes to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 throughout. I think that's probably all I'm going to say about that for the moment. Yeah, because then when you're practicing slowly, you're actually practicing fast in micro bursts. That's prestissimo, isn't it? So yes, thank you for watching. That's the list of questions that came in. So what we do, there's a blog post that you can check out as to how to put the questions in. One thing I do need is bar numbers. I can't work without bar numbers. If you haven't got bar numbers in your piece, just send me a photo, send us a photocopy of that spot. And if you want to annotate that photocopy, brilliant, even better. And we have a 2-week cut-off before the practice clinic so we can get our ducks in a row here. So thank you so much for watching. I hope my ideas have been interesting and helpful and maybe encouraging as well. And I will see you next month for our next practice clinic. So happy practicing and thank you.